Maya had been looking forward to this Saturday morning for weeks. After pulling 3 straight weeks of presidential detail assignments, she finally had a full weekend off. No early morning briefings, no security sweeps, no standing for hours, in a black suit under the scorching sun. Just her, a cup of coffee, and maybe a trip to the bookstore she'd been meaning to visit. She slipped on her favorite jeans and a comfortable sweater, grabbed her keys, and headed out to her personal car. A modest sedan that was worlds apart from the armored vehicles she was used to. It felt good to drive something normal for once, something that didn't scream federal agent to everyone on the road. The morning traffic was light as she made her way through downtown. Maya had always loved this part of the city, the old buildings, mixed with new construction, the small cafes with their outdoor seating, the way the morning light hit the windows just right. It reminded her why she'd chosen to live here instead of in the suburbs like most of her colleagues. She was thinking about which book she might pick up when her phone buzzed with a text from her sister. "Still on for lunch tomorrow?" Maya glanced at the message at a red light and smiled. Her sister Keisha was the only family member who didn't constantly worry about her job. While their mother called every few days asking if she was being careful, Keisha treated her like any other working professional. The light turned green and Maya tucked her phone away. She was in the middle lane, cruising at a comfortable speed when she noticed a slower car ahead. Without thinking much about it, she checked her mirrors and smoothly moved to the left lane to go around. It was a simple, everyday driving maneuver that she'd done thousands of times. That's when she saw the flashing lights in her rearview mirror. Maya's heart sank a little. She hadn't been speeding. She was sure of that. Her training had made her hyper-aware of following traffic laws, especially when she was off duty. She pulled over to the right side of the road and rolled down her window, keeping her hands visible on the steering wheel just like she'd been taught. The officer who approached was young, probably fresh out of the academy. He had that eager-to-prove himself look that Maya recognized from her early days in law enforcement. His nameplate read, "Officer Johnson." "Do you know why I pulled you over today, ma'am?" he asked, already reaching for his citation book. Maya kept her voice calm and respectful. "No, officer, I don't. I was maintaining the speed limit and signaled when I changed lanes." Officer Johnson shook his head. "You were going 15 over the speed limit back there. I clocked you at 40 in a 25 zone." Maya was genuinely confused. She'd been paying attention to her speed and she was certain she hadn't been going that fast. "Officer, I believe there might be some mistake. I was going about 30, maybe 32 at most. I'm very careful about my speed." "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your license and registration," Johnson said, ignoring her explanation entirely. Maya reached slowly for her purse, announcing each movement. "I'm reaching for my wallet now." She handed over her documents, watching as the officer examined them. For a brief moment, she considered mentioning her federal credentials. It would have been easy, just a simple, "Officer, I'm with the Secret Service," and this whole thing would probably disappear. Most local law enforcement officers were respectful when they learned she was a federal agent. It was an unspoken professional courtesy that existed in law enforcement circles. But something stopped her. Maya had always believed that the law should apply equally to everyone. If she was really speeding, which she didn't believe she was, then she should get a ticket like any other citizen. Using her badge to get out of legitimate traffic stops felt wrong to her, like an abuse of the trust the public had placed in her. Besides, this seemed like a simple misunderstanding. She'd explain her side in court if necessary, maybe bring her dashcam footage as evidence. The system was supposed to work fairly for everyone, regardless of their job or background. Officer Johnson returned with her license and a citation. "I'm writing you a ticket for speeding," he said, not making eye contact. "You can contest it in court if you want, but I'd suggest you just pay the fine and move on." Maya accepted the ticket and looked at it briefly. The court date was 3 weeks away. "Thank you, officer. I'll see you in court then." Johnson looked surprised. Most people just grumbled and drove away. "You're really going to fight a simple speeding ticket?" "If I wasn't speeding, then yes, I am. Maya said simply. As she drove away, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something had been off about the whole interaction. She'd been pulled over before in her personal car, and it had never felt quite like this. There was something about Officer Johnson's attitude, the way he'd immediately jumped to writing a ticket without really listening to her explanation. She thought about calling her supervisor to ask about department policy on using credentials during traffic stops, but decided against it. This wasn't a federal matter, it was just a traffic ticket. She'd handle it the same way any other citizen would. Over the next few days, Maya found herself thinking about the incident more than she expected to. She reviewed the dashcam footage from her personal vehicle and confirmed what she already knew. She hadn't been speeding. The video clearly showed her speedometer reading 31 miles per hour when she changed lanes, well within the speed limit for that stretch of road. Her colleagues at work had mixed reactions when she mentioned the upcoming court date during a lunch break. Some thought she was crazy for not just paying the fine and moving on. Others supported her decision to fight it, especially Agent Rodriguez, who'd had his own experiences with questionable traffic stops. You know, you could just flash the badge and make this whole thing go away, Rodriguez had said. Judge sees your Secret Service, case dismissed. Maya had shaken her head. That's exactly why I'm not going to do it. If the system only works fairly when you have a badge, then it's not really working fairly at all. Her partner, Agent Thompson, had given her a long look. You know, Maya, sometimes I think you have too much faith in the system. Maybe, Maya had replied. But if people like us don't have faith in it, who will? As the court date approached, Maya prepared her case the same way she prepared for everything else in her life, thoroughly and professionally. She organized her evidence, practiced her explanation, and made sure she understood the court procedures. She even took a half-day off work to make sure she could appear in court properly dressed and on time. The night before her court appearance, Maya laid out her clothes carefully. She chose a conservative business outfit. Nothing too flashy, nothing that would draw unnecessary attention. She wanted to be seen as just another citizen seeking justice, not as someone trying to intimidate or impress the court. She had no idea that the next day would test everything she believed about fairness, respect, and the equal application of justice under the law. Maya arrived at the courthouse 30 minutes early, just like she did for everything important in her life. The building was one of those old government structures with high ceilings and marble floors that echoed every footstep. She'd been in plenty of courtrooms before, but always as a federal agent providing security or testimony. Today felt different. Today she was just another citizen seeking justice. She found a seat in the back of the courtroom and watched as other cases were called. Traffic court was busy that morning. A steady stream of people challenging tickets, requesting payment plans, or simply pleading guilty to get it over with. Maya noticed that most people seemed nervous, fidgeting with papers or checking their phones constantly. The judge presiding over the session was an older man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His nameplate read Judge Harold Brennan. Maya had done a little research on him the night before. 23 years on the bench, known for running an efficient courtroom and having little patience for what he considered frivolous cases. Maya watched Judge Brennan handle the cases before hers. His style was direct, sometimes blunt, but seemed fair enough. She started to feel more confident about her chances. She had her evidence organized, her explanation prepared, and the dashcam footage ready on her tablet. Case number 47892, City versus Maya Richardson, the bailiff called out. Maya stood up, smoothed her blazer, and walked to the front of the courtroom. She'd chosen her outfit carefully, a navy blue business suit that was professional but not flashy. She wanted to look respectable without drawing too much attention to herself. "Good morning, Your Honor," she said politely as she approached the podium. Judge Brennan barely looked up from his paperwork. "Ms. Richardson, you're here to contest a speeding citation issued on..." He glanced at the file. "March 15th. How do you plead?" "Not guilty, Your Honor. I believe there's been a mistake." That's when Judge Brennan finally looked up at her. His expression seemed to shift slightly, and Maya couldn't quite put her finger on what changed. His eyes narrowed just a bit, and she noticed his posture stiffen. "A mistake?" Judge Brennan's tone had an edge to it now. Officer Johnson clocked you going 15 miles over the speed limit. Are you saying a trained police officer doesn't know how to use a radar gun? Maya kept her voice steady and respectful. Your Honor, I'm not questioning Officer Johnson's training. I'm simply saying that I was not exceeding the speed limit. I have dashcam footage that shows my speedometer at the time of the alleged violation. Dashcam footage, Judge Brennan repeated, and Maya could hear something that sounded almost like mockery in his voice. How convenient. And I suppose this footage just happens to prove your innocence. Maya felt a slight chill run down her spine. This wasn't going the way she'd expected. Your Honor, I'd like to present the evidence for your review. Ms. Richardson, Judge Brennan said, leaning back in his chair. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I've heard every excuse in the book. The speedometer was broken, the radar was wrong, the officer was mistaken. Let me guess, this is all just a big misunderstanding, right? The judge's tone was becoming increasingly condescending, and Maya could feel her jaw tighten. But she maintained her composure. This was exactly the kind of situation her training had prepared her for. Staying calm under pressure, not letting emotions override professionalism. Your Honor, I understand that you hear many contested cases, but I'm asking for the opportunity to present my evidence. That's my right under the law. Judge Brennan's eyebrows shot up. Your right under the law? Well, well. We have a legal scholar here, folks. He gestured to the courtroom, and Maya heard a few uncomfortable chuckles from the gallery. Tell me, Ms. Richardson, where did you get your law degree? Maya felt heat rising in her cheeks. Your Honor, I don't have a law degree, but I do understand basic legal procedures and the right to present evidence in my defense. Basic legal procedures, Judge Brennan repeated slowly. And what makes you think you understand legal procedures better than the officer who cited you? Better than this court? Maya could sense that something was going very wrong here. The judge's questions weren't about the facts of her case. They were personal, almost attacking. She glanced around the courtroom and noticed that other people were starting to look uncomfortable too. The bailiff was watching more closely than before. Your Honor, I'm not claiming to know better than anyone. I'm simply asking to present evidence that I believe is relevant to my case. Judge Brennan shook his head slowly. You know what your problem is, Ms. Richardson? People like you always think the rules don't apply to you. You always have an excuse, always have some story about why you're different, why you're special. Maya's heart started beating faster. People like me, Your Honor? Don't play games with me, Judge Brennan snapped. You come into my courtroom with your fancy clothes and your attitude, thinking you can talk your way out of a simple traffic ticket. You think because you speak well and dress nicely that somehow the law works differently for you. The courtroom had gone completely quiet now. Maya could feel everyone's eyes on her, and she realized that this had stopped being about a traffic ticket. This was about something much deeper and much more troubling. Maya took a deep breath. Her training kicked in again. Stay calm, don't escalate, maintain professionalism even when others don't. Your Honor, I came here today with respect for this court and for the legal process. I'm asking for the same basic consideration that any citizen deserves. Consideration? Judge Brennan's voice was getting louder now. You want special consideration? Here's some consideration for you. You were speeding, you got caught, and now you need to take responsibility for your actions instead of wasting this court's time with your elaborate stories and your technology. Maya could feel her hands trembling, slightly, but she kept them steady at her sides. Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment, I'm asking for fair treatment. Fair treatment, Judge Brennan said with what sounded like disgust. Let me tell you what's fair, Ms. Richardson. What's fair is that you accept the consequences of your actions like everyone else. What's fair is that you don't come into my courtroom thinking your attitude and your excuses are going to get you out of a ticket that you clearly deserve. Maya realized that no matter what evidence she presented, no matter how professional she remained, Judge Brennan had already made up his mind about her. And it wasn't based on the facts of her case. The silence in the courtroom was deafening. Maya could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of everyone's stares. She thought about all the time she'd stood in rooms with presidents and world leaders protecting them from threats they never even knew existed. She thought about the oath she'd taken to serve and protect, about the trust the American people had placed in her. And here she was, being treated like this in a court of law, simply for asking for basic fairness. Maya looked directly at Judge Brennan, her voice steady despite everything. Your Honor, I've spent my entire adult life serving this country and upholding the law. All I'm asking for today is the same justice that should be available to every American citizen. Judge Brennan's face flushed red. Don't you lecture me about justice, young lady. You don't know the first thing about respect or responsibility. Maya felt the weight of every eye in the courtroom on her. The silence was so thick she could almost touch it. Judge Brennan was staring at her with barely concealed anger, and she knew that whatever happened next would determine not just the outcome of her case, but possibly much more. She reached into her folder and pulled out her tablet, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. Your Honor, if I may just show you the dashcam footage from my vehicle, it clearly demonstrates that I was not exceeding the speed limit. Put that away, Judge Brennan barked. I don't want to see your so-called evidence. Maya blinked in surprise. Your Honor, this is physical evidence that directly relates to the charges against me. Don't I have the right to present evidence in my defense? You have the right to remain silent and accept your punishment, Judge Brennan snapped. That's what you have the right to do. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Maya could see people shifting in their seats, whispering to each other. Even the court reporter looked up from her machine with a confused expression. This wasn't how traffic court was supposed to work, and everyone knew it. Maya took a deep breath. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. Now she was moving into a different mode, the same calm focus she used when facing real threats. Your Honor, with all due respect, I believe you're required by law to allow me to present relevant evidence. Judge Brennan's face turned a deeper shade of red. Don't you tell me what I'm required to do. I've been running this courtroom since before you were old enough to drive, and I don't need some uppity young woman telling me how to do my job. The word uppity hung in the air like a slap. Maya felt something cold settle in her stomach. She'd heard that word before, always in the same context, always carrying the same ugly weight. Your Honor, Maya said quietly, I'm simply asking for the same treatment that any defendant would receive. The same treatment? Judge Brennan laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think you deserve the same treatment? You walk into my courtroom with your fancy suit and your technology, acting like you're better than everyone else, and you think you deserve special treatment? Maya noticed that the bailiff had moved closer. Officer Martinez, according to his name tag, looked uncomfortable. She could see him glancing between her and the judge, clearly sensing that something was very wrong with this situation. Your Honor, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for equal treatment under the law. Equal treatment, Judge Brennan repeated mockingly. Let me tell you something about equal treatment, Ms. Richardson. Equal treatment means you pay your fine like everyone else instead of coming in here with your attitude and your excuses. Maya felt her professional training warring with her personal feelings. Every instinct told her to stay calm, to de-escalate, to find a way to resolve this peacefully. But another part of her, the part that had sworn an oath to protect and defend the Constitution, was getting angry. Your Honor, I don't have an attitude. I have evidence. Evidence that shows I wasn't speeding. If you would just look at it. I said, put that away, Judge Brennan shouted, pointing at her tablet. I don't want to see your fake evidence or hear your sob story. You were caught breaking the law, and now you want to argue about it because you think the rules don't apply to you. Maya could hear people in the gallery starting to talk more loudly. Someone behind her said, "This isn't right." Another voice said, "He can't just refuse to look at evidence, can he?" The judge seemed to notice the crowd's reaction, and it only made him angrier. "I will have order in this courtroom," he shouted, banging his gavel so hard that Maya jumped. "Anyone who can't keep quiet can leave right now." Maya looked around and saw that several people were pulling out their phones. In today's world, she realized everything was recorded. Whatever happened here would probably be on social media within hours. "Your Honor," she tried again, "I understand that you run this courtroom, but I also understand that there are procedures and laws that govern these proceedings. I'm asking you to follow those procedures." Judge Brennan stood up behind his bench, towering over the courtroom. How dare you? How dare you come into my courtroom and tell me what procedures to follow? You think because you talk fancy and dress nice that you can lecture me about the law? Maya felt something shift inside her. She'd spent years protecting people who sometimes treated her badly, who sometimes questioned whether she belonged in her job, who sometimes made comments that cut deep. But she'd always told herself it was worth it because she was serving something bigger than herself. Justice, fairness, the idea that America was a place where everyone got a fair shake. Standing here now, watching a judge refuse to even look at evidence simply because he'd decided he didn't like her, Maya realized that all her faith in the system might have been misplaced. Your Honor, she said. And now her voice carried a different quality. Not the respectful tone of a defendant, but the steady authority of someone who'd faced down real threats. I'm not lecturing you about the law. I'm reminding you of your oath to uphold it. The courtroom went dead silent. Even Judge Brennan seemed shocked by her words. What did you just say to me? He asked quietly, his voice dangerous. Maya knew she was at a crossroads. She could back down, apologize, pay the fine and walk away, or she could stand up for what she believed in. The principle that justice should be blind, that everyone deserved fair treatment regardless of who they were or what they looked like. I said that you took an oath to uphold the law, Your Honor, just like I did in my job. And right now you're not doing that. Judge Brennan's mouth fell open. For a moment he seemed too shocked to speak. Then his face twisted with rage. Your job? He sputtered. What job? You think your little office job makes you some kind of expert on the law? You think working in some cubicle somewhere gives you the right to come into my courtroom and disrespect me? Maya almost smiled at that. A cubicle job. If only he knew. I don't work in a cubicle, Your Honor. I don't care if you're the CEO of some company, Judge Brennan raged. In this courtroom, I am the authority. I decide what evidence gets heard. I decide who's guilty and who's innocent. And I've decided that you're guilty of more than just speeding. You're guilty of contempt of court. A gasp went through the gallery. Contempt of court was serious. It could mean jail time, fines, a criminal record. Maya felt her heart rate spike, but she kept her expression calm. Your Honor, I haven't shown contempt for this court. I've shown respect for the law that this court is supposed to represent. Bailiff, Judge Brennan shouted. Prepare to take this woman into custody. For contempt. Officer Martinez looked shocked. Your Honor, are you sure? She hasn't really... Don't question me, Judge Brennan screamed. She thinks she's above the law, thinks she can come in here and tell me how to run my courtroom. Well, let's see how. She likes spending a night in jail. Maya could feel the situation spiraling completely out of control. People in the gallery were standing up, some of them shouting. She could hear someone say, "This is crazy," and another voice saying, "Someone needs to record this." The bailiff was walking toward her now, looking like he really didn't want to be doing this but didn't know how to refuse a direct order from the judge. Maya knew that in about 30 seconds, she was going to be arrested for contempt of court. Her career would be over. Her security clearance would be revoked. Everything she'd worked for her entire adult life would be gone. All because she'd asked for the right to present evidence in a simple traffic case. She looked at Judge Brennan, who was practically vibrating with rage, and made a decision that would change everything. Maya watched Officer Martinez take another step toward her, his hand reluctantly moving toward his handcuffs. The bailiff's eyes kept darting between her and Judge Brennan, clearly uncomfortable with what he was being asked to do. Maya could see the conflict written all over his face. He knew this wasn't right, but he also knew he couldn't directly disobey a judge's order. The courtroom was in chaos now. People were standing up, talking loudly, some pulling out phones to record what was happening. Maya heard someone near the back shout, "This is insane," while another voice called out, "Judge, you can't just arrest her for asking questions." Judge Brennan was still standing behind his bench, his face red with anger, pointing his finger at Maya like she was some kind of criminal. "I said take her into custody. She thinks she can disrespect this court and get away with it. Well, she's about to learn that actions have consequences." Maya felt time slowing down around her. In 30 seconds, maybe less, she would be in handcuffs. Her supervisor would get a call from local police. Her security clearance would be suspended pending investigation. The media would probably pick up the story. Secret Service agent arrested for contempt of court. And her career would be over before anyone even bothered to find out what really happened. She thought about her sister Keisha, who would probably see it on the news before Maya could even call to explain. She thought about her mother, who already worried too much about Maya's dangerous job, only to have her daughter's career destroyed in a traffic court over a speeding ticket she didn't even deserve. Most of all, she thought about the oath she'd taken when she joined the Secret Service, to protect and defend, to serve with honor and integrity, to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States. Standing here now, facing a judge who was willing to destroy her life, rather than simply look at evidence, Maya realized that sometimes protecting and defending meant standing up to people who abused their power, even when those people wore robes and sat behind high benches. Officer Martinez was only a few feet away now. Maya could see the reluctance in his eyes, but she also knew he would follow through. He had to. That was how the system worked. Judges gave orders, bailiffs followed them, and individual rights got trampled in the process. "Your Honor," Maya said quietly, her voice cutting through the noise in the courtroom. "Before Officer Martinez places me under arrest, I think there's something you should know." Judge Brennan laughed harshly. "Oh, now you want to talk? Now you want to show some respect? It's too late for that, Ms. Richardson. You had your chance to be respectful, and you chose to be difficult instead." Maya reached slowly into the inner pocket of her blazer. Every movement was deliberate and careful. She knew that sudden movements in tense situations could be misinterpreted, especially with so many people watching. "I'm reaching for my identification," she announced clearly, making sure both Officer Martinez and Judge Brennan could see exactly what she was doing. "We already have your identification," Judge Brennan snapped. "Your driver's license, remember? The one that goes with your speeding ticket?" Maya's fingers found the leather wallet she always carried, the one that contained credentials most people would never see in their entire lives. She pulled it out slowly, deliberately, and opened it with the kind of practiced motion that came from years of showing it to security checkpoints, foreign officials, and other law enforcement officers. The courtroom had gone quiet again. But it was a different kind of quiet this time. People were leaning forward trying to see what she was holding. Officer Martinez had stopped walking toward her, confusion clear on his face. Maya held up her credentials so that Judge Brennan could see them clearly from his bench. The gold badge caught the fluorescent lights of the courtroom, and the official seal of the United States was clearly visible even from a distance. "Your Honor," Maya said, her voice steady and professional. "My name is Agent Maya Richardson, and I'm a special agent with the United States Secret Service." The words seemed to hang in the air like a physical thing. Judge Brennan's mouth fell, open, and Maya watched the color drain from his face as the reality of what she'd just said hit him. Officer Martinez stopped in his tracks, his eyes going wide as he stared at Maya's credentials. Behind her, she could hear gasps and whispers from the gallery as people realized what was happening. "I have been protecting the President of the United States and other high-ranking officials for the past 8 years," Maya continued, her voice carrying the quiet authority that came from briefing heads of state and coordinating with foreign security services. "I hold a top-secret security clearance with the Department of Homeland Security. I have testified before Congress on matters of national security." Judge Brennan seemed to shrink back into his chair, his eyes fixed on the badge in Maya's hand, like it might bite him. "I came to your court today as a private citizen seeking the same fair treatment under the law that every American deserves," Maya went on. "I didn't use my credentials to get out of the traffic stop, even though I could have. I didn't mention my job when I walked into this courtroom, even though it might have made things easier. I wanted to be treated like any other citizen because I believe that's how justice is supposed to work." The silence in the courtroom was deafening now. Maya could hear the hum of the air conditioning, the distant sound of traffic outside, even the quiet whir of the court reporter's machine. But from the people around her, nothing. Judge Brennan was staring at her credentials like he was seeing a ghost. His hands were trembling slightly as he gripped the edge of his bench. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your Secret Service? Yes, Your Honor, I am. Maya's voice was calm, professional, but there was steel underneath it now. I'm someone who swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States, the same Constitution that guarantees every citizen the right to due process, the right to present evidence in their defense, the right to be treated fairly by the courts regardless of their race, gender, or social status. Judge Brennan's face had gone from red to pale gray. Maya could see him trying to process what was happening, trying to figure out how he'd gone from being the powerful authority figure in the room to being the one who looked small and frightened. I didn't know, he stammered. You didn't know because I didn't tell you, Maya said simply. Because my job shouldn't matter. The color of my skin shouldn't matter. The way I dress or speak shouldn't matter. What should matter is the evidence, the facts, and the law. That's what should matter in any courtroom in America. Officer Martinez had backed away completely now, clearly wanting no part of arresting a federal agent. The people in the gallery were on their feet, some of them taking pictures, others just staring in amazement at what they were witnessing. Maya looked directly at Judge Brennan, who seemed to have forgotten how to speak. Your Honor, I protect people who sometimes don't like me very much. I've taken bullets meant for officials who've never bothered to learn my name. I've stood in rooms with world leaders and terrorists, with presidents and criminals. But I've never, not once in my entire career, been treated with the disrespect and prejudice that you've shown me in this courtroom today. Judge Brennan tried to speak, but only a strangled sound came out. Maya could see sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. The really sad part, Maya continued, is that you never even looked at my evidence. You never gave me a chance to prove my innocence. You decided I was guilty the moment you looked at me, and nothing I could say or do was going to change your mind. She closed her credentials and put them back in her jacket, the motion as deliberate as when she'd taken them out. Your Honor, I believe you mentioned something about dismissing the charges. Judge Brennan's hands were shaking as he fumbled with the papers on his desk. The powerful, intimidating man who had been shouting and threatening just minutes before now looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. He kept glancing at Maya, then looking away quickly as if he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. The charges, he stammered, his voice barely audible. All charges are dismissed. The courtroom erupted. People were clapping, cheering, and talking all at once. Maya could hear someone behind her say, "Did you get that on video?" While another voice called out, "That's what I'm talking about." The energy in the room had completely shifted from tense and uncomfortable to celebratory and electric. Maya nodded politely to Judge Brennan. "Thank you, Your Honor." Her voice was calm and professional, showing none of the satisfaction she felt inside. She'd learned long ago that how you handled victory said as much about your character as how you handled defeat. Officer Martinez approached her carefully, still looking somewhat stunned. "Agent Richardson, I'm sorry about all this. I had no idea." Maya turned to him with a slight smile. "Officer Martinez, you were just doing your job. You conducted yourself professionally throughout this entire situation. That's all anyone can ask." The bailiff looked relieved. "Thank you, ma'am. And for what it's worth, what happened here today, it wasn't right, regardless of who you are or what your job is." Maya appreciated his words more than he probably knew. "You're right, officer. It wasn't right, and that's exactly why it needed to be addressed." As Maya gathered her papers and tablet, she noticed that Judge Brennan was still sitting motionless behind his bench, staring at nothing in particular. She almost felt sorry for him. Almost. She knew that in the next few hours, his world was going to change dramatically. The gallery was slowly emptying, but several people approached Maya as she headed toward the exit. An elderly woman touched her arm gently. "Honey, what you did in there, that took courage. Real courage." A young man with his phone still recording said, "Agent Richardson, can I ask you something? Why didn't you just show your badge from the beginning? You could have avoided all this." Maya paused, considering the question. It was something she'd been thinking about throughout this whole ordeal. Because justice shouldn't depend on who you know or what job you have. Every person who walks into a courtroom deserves to be treated fairly, whether they're a federal agent or someone working at a fast food restaurant. The moment we start making exceptions based on status or position, we stop having real justice. The young man nodded thoughtfully. That's going to be all over social media in about 10 minutes. Maya smiled. That's okay. Maybe it should be. As she walked out of the courthouse, Maya pulled out her phone. She had 17 missed calls and about 40 text messages. Word had already gotten out somehow, probably through the court security. Protocols that automatically flagged when federal credentials were presented in legal proceedings. Her supervisor, Deputy Director Chen, had called 6 times. Maya dialed her back immediately. Maya, what the hell happened down there? Chen's voice was concerned but not angry. I got a call from courthouse security saying you presented credentials in a traffic court case. Maya explained the situation as she walked to her car, leaving out nothing. Chen listened without interrupting, and Maya could almost hear her taking notes. So let me get this straight, Chen said when Maya finished. You got pulled over for speeding. You didn't use your credentials to get out of the ticket. You went to court to fight it fairly, and the judge basically tried to railroad you because of what exactly? I think you can figure that out, Director. There was a long pause. Maya, I'm proud of you for handling this the right way, but you know this is going to be a big deal, right? When federal agents get involved in judicial misconduct cases, it tends to make headlines. Maya had been thinking about that too. I know, but I'm not sorry it happened. Someone needed to stand up to him. You're right, and between you and me, this isn't the first complaint we've heard about Judge Brennan. Internal Affairs has been building a file on him for months. Your incident might be the final straw. Maya felt a mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication, because it confirmed what she'd suspected, that her treatment hadn't been an isolated incident. Sadness because it meant other people had been subjected to the same unfair treatment, but probably hadn't had the resources or position to fight back. What happens next? Maya asked. Well, first you're going to write the most detailed report of your life, Chen said with a slight chuckle. Then Internal Affairs is going to want to interview you. The State Judicial Review Board will probably want to talk to you too. And Maya? Yes, ma'am? Take tomorrow off. This kind of stress isn't something you just shake off. Maya appreciated the concern, but she was actually feeling better than she had in weeks. I'm fine, Director, really. This reminded me why I do this job in the first place. When Maya got home that evening, her phone was still buzzing constantly. Her sister Keisha had called 3 times, her mother twice, and several of her colleagues had texted asking if she was okay. But it was the message from Agent Rodriguez that made her smile. Saw the news. You're officially the most badass agent in the service. Drinks are on me next Friday. Maya was heating up leftover Chinese food when her doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole and saw her sister standing on the porch with a bottle of wine and a huge grin. I came to celebrate, Keisha announced, as Maya opened the door. My sister just became a viral hero. I'm not a hero, Maya protested as they settled on the couch with wine glasses. I just stood up for myself. That's exactly what makes you a hero, Keisha said. You know how many people would have just paid the fine and walked away? You risked your career to make a point about fairness. Maya thought about that. I didn't risk my career. I honored it. Everything I've sworn to protect was being attacked in that courtroom today. The Constitution, equal justice, basic human dignity. How could I not fight back? Over the next few days, the story exploded across social media and news outlets. The video that the young man had recorded went viral within hours, accumulating millions of views and thousands of comments. Most of the responses were positive, praising Maya for her dignity and principles. Some criticized her for playing the race card or abusing her position, but those voices were largely drowned out by support. More importantly, the State Judicial Review Board announced a formal investigation into Judge Brennan's conduct. 3 other people came forward with similar stories about unfair treatment in his courtroom. A civil rights organization announced they were filing a formal complaint with the Department of Justice. Judge Brennan himself released a brief statement through his lawyer, saying he regretted any misunderstanding and was committed to fair and impartial justice. Maya thought the statement was exactly what she'd expected, taking no real responsibility while trying to minimize the damage. 2 weeks after the incident, Maya received a call that surprised her. It was Officer Johnson, the cop who had originally pulled her over. "Agent Richardson, I wanted to apologize," he said. "I've been thinking about that traffic stop and I realize I was wrong. You weren't speeding. I think I mixed up your car with another one I'd been following." When I heard what happened in court, I felt terrible. Maya was quiet for a moment. "Officer Johnson, I appreciate you calling. That takes courage." "Not as much courage as what you did," he replied. "I've learned a lot from this whole situation. About fairness, about not making assumptions. I wanted you to know that." A month later, Maya was back in court, but this time as a witness before the Judicial Review Board. She testified for 2 hours about what had happened, answering every question with the same calm professionalism she'd shown in Judge Brennan's courtroom. The board's decision came 3 weeks after that. Judge Brennan was suspended pending further investigation, with a recommendation for permanent removal from the bench. Maya felt no satisfaction from his downfall. What she felt was hope. Hope that the system could still work when people were willing to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. The real victory, she realized, wasn't in the judge's punishment. It was in the message that had been sent. That justice truly was supposed to be blind, and that everyone, regardless of their race, gender, or social status, deserved to be treated with dignity and fairness under the law. That was a victory worth fighting for.